The views and opinions expressed on our podcast by us or by any guest are those of our own and of our guests. They do not reflect the views, opinions, or approval of any Grand Lodge of Freemasonry or any lodge of any jurisdiction. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Masonic Ring Podcast. I am your host, Brother Nathan Davis, and I hail from the Western Sun Masonic Lodge number 91 in Wheelersburg, Ohio. On today's episode, we're going to be answering some common questions that we get a lot of time as Freemasons. And it's good to ask questions, and it's also good to answer questions. So some of these are ones that I found online. Some of them are ones that I know I have been asked personally, and I just wanted to hop on here and see if we could maybe dispel some common myths as well while we're answering questions. So before we do that, I want to plug our Facebook page where you can watch live recordings of this podcast on Facebook live stream. Go to Facebook and look up the Masonic Ring Podcast and give that page a like. And then you can also visit our website, themasonicring.com. And you can also email us at themasonicring@gmail.com. If you have any questions that you would like answered, or if you have a topic that you would like discussed, hop onto our Facebook page, and there you can post a comment below one of our pictures. I read all the comments. I may not respond to all of them, but I do read them, and every so often I'll post on there if we can discuss something that you would like to hear about. Let me know, and I'll do some research on it so that we can try to enlighten people. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We are streaming live on Facebook right now. It's a little earlier than I normally do it, but hopefully we'll have some people log on. I see we have one watcher. And that's pretty good for really not doing much of an announcement. What I'm going to try to do is do it a little bit on a schedule, like on at this time on this day. That's hard for me right now because I am a manager at a propane company, and we are still in winter here in Ohio. It's funny, the weather, it's just been crazy. Last week it was in the 40s or high 40s and 50s. Week before that it was in the 60s. Now it's low 30s, and then next week it's supposed to be up near 70. So we're going into March though, so then begins a transition into our summer season. Although not as critical, I do stay pretty busy, but you guys didn't log on here to listen to me ramble about my job. Sorry, I had to get me something to drink. Okay, so we're going to answer some common questions. If you have any questions on Facebook, please feel free to ask them. And if I know the answer, I will answer it. If not, I will try to find the answer. I think probably the biggest thing that we should talk about first is what is Freemasonry? I think that's the biggest question that I get more than anything is, what is Freemasonry? So Freemasonry is I want to say, like, I want to give the honest answer, or the quickest answer, which is, oh well, it's the oldest and largest fraternity in the world. But that doesn't really answer any questions. I think Freemasonry as a whole has an explanation, but I think it also means different things to different people that are a member of it. You also have the hate groups and the haters out there that they jump on a bandwagon and say that everything Freemasonry is wrong, or you're worshiping Juan Ramon Santiago. Hello. Thank you for joining. Or you're worshiping the devil, or sacrificing goats, or I don't know. There's so much crap out there. But what we're going to talk about right now is, what is Freemasonry? Freemasonry itself it's over 300 years old. It was originally organized, which means that there was a grand lodge. This is where it was officially organized, was in 1717 in England. The Grand Lodge of England formally organized Freemasonry, Free and Accepted Masons, and then it spread from there. I can tell you what it's not. It is not a religion. It is not a replacement for faith. It is not a place for drunkards to go and get drunk and just to get away from their wives. It is a fraternity, but it's more than that. It's a bond of brotherhood. It's a fraternity where men come to join, and where everyone is equal. When you walk into the lodge room, everyone is equal. Your social status, your financial status, your public, whatever the case may be, all of that doesn't mean anything when you enter the lodge room. We are all brothers. We are all meant to be equal and level. And so, when people will say, well, it's just an organization for rich white men to go and try to take over the world, and to do this and that. What I can tell you is, Freemasonry, we're not trying to take over the world, because a lot of times we can't even agree on what type of vacuum to buy. It's if we can't agree on what's the best way to fix the roof, or the best air freshener to use, or whatever, we're definitely not going to agree on the best way to take over the world, because it's just not happening. So the big picture is that Freemasonry is a system of morality. We, as free and accepted Masons, agree to live with integrity and morality. We use Freemasonry and the working tools of life to try and improve ourselves. It is not about pointing fingers and saying, so-and-so needs to fix himself, let's get him into Freemasonry. It's about joining Freemasonry and improving yourself, making yourself better. That's where the tagline comes in. Hello, worshipful brother. Worshipful brother Kevin McDavid is here. Good to have you. You've heard the tagline, Freemasonry, making good men better. Well, that is essentially what it is. It's more than that, but it's about, it's about coming together under a bond of brotherhood, having a support system, and using the teachings of Freemasonry to make yourself a better person. It is not a church. We are not a religion. We are not a faith. We leave that up to each person's individuality. We are also not a replacement for faith or family or anything like that. We expect you to have your own faith, your own views, your own whatever. And, we are not going to tell you that, hey, you're a Christian, or, hey, you're a Jew. We're not going to tell you that you're not welcome, because the only requirement as far as faith is concerned is that you have to confess and you have to believe in a higher power. that higher power, what you choose is up to you. It's not our job to tell you which God to believe in, because we're not a faith. I happen to be a Christian of the Baptist denomination. That is who I am. That's who I choose. I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe in the crucifixion and resurrection and salvation through the blood. That's how I believe. But as a free and accepted Mason, I am not going to reject anyone that comes in and wants to make themselves better if they are of good moral character. So as a Master Mason who has been through all 3 degrees of Freemasonry, what we as Masons do, as in far as what is Freemasonry, we use symbols throughout the degrees to help reinforce ideas and concepts. That happens in what we call the Blue Lodge, which is your home lodge, which is the lodge that you were that you joined as a Freemason, or whatever lodge that you belong to. Each lodge in the area is a part of a grand lodge or a grand jurisdiction. And a lodge has its own charter, and that is granted by the Grand Lodge of their jurisdiction. Ours in Ohio is obviously the Grand Lodge of Ohio. Now, as I have said before, I don't speak for, on this podcast, I don't speak for the Grand Lodge of Ohio. I don't speak for my Blue Lodge. I speak for myself. This is just for me. If I were to get on here and say something that would happen to go against my obligation, then yes, the Grand Lodge could potentially get involved. But as a Freemason, I'm not going to do that. This podcast is meant to be fun for me, but it's also meant to educate people. You know, Freemasons are of all different backgrounds, of all different ethnicities, and we come together as brothers. As I was saying, that Freemasonry is not a religion, but it does encourage its members to find a church and pray to God. Masons are from all different religions, and they come together to talk to one another about the fraternity, not about politics, not about religion, not about business. We discuss how to improve ourselves as people and how to do good in and around our community. How can we help people? Because bottom line, we are a charitable organization. So what are we doing to be out in the community? Now that takes some doing, because everybody will have their own ideas, and what's best is to come to a compromise. What can we do? Donating money, obviously. People are always needing money for different things, Little League, stuff like that. But food pantries, different things. But what can we do besides just hand out money? We should be active and involved. And so we come together to improve ourselves, to support our brethren, to support their family, and also to help the community. And I think that pretty much sums it up, but you can go back on a previous podcast that I did. I go into a lot more detail of what is Freemasonry. And you can also go to any of the Grand Lodge websites, and it'll explain everything on there as well. This is another question that I have heard. I haven't directly been asked, but this is another question that I have heard. Are Freemasons just greedy? Are they just greedy businessmen that come together and try to figure out how to get more money? Freemasons in Free and Accepted Masons we're not greedy at all. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we want to do is to give our money to help in any way that we can, if we have it. The lodge itself, we don't expect a brother to give money if he's not able to. That is perfectly fine. There's brothers that in the lodge that have a lot of money. There's brothers in the lodge that don't have very much money, and we do not expect somebody to hand over any money for any cause if they're not able to. In fact, a lot of lodges have a system set up that if a brother is unable to pay his dues, then that through that system, they pay the brother's dues for him and then work on helping him in his financial state or whatever. Maybe he needs help finding a job. We get with the brothers, and the brothers start reaching out to other people they know. I think the greediness comes from the fact that people think that the Knights Templar and Freemasonry are hand in hand, like they are one in the same organization, which isn't true at all, and that the Knights Templar have a famous treasure. I mean, there's movies made about it. You can go and there's on the History Channel now. What is it? The Curse of Oak Island. They're searching for the treasure of the Knights Templar. Well, Freemasonry existed, or Freemasonry and the Knights Templar exist separately. Freemasons really didn't have much to do with the Knights Templar. They're two different organizations. So why aren't we sharing this treasure with people if it's so vast? And I think in the movie National Treasure, they say that the treasure was so huge that it wasn't fit for any one man, not even a king. From the map, on that movie, from the back of the Declaration of Independence, which just, I don't know, it kind of makes me roll my eyes a little bit, but from that map, they were able to figure out that the treasure was buried underneath an old church, underneath a church, which was underneath a crypt, which was in a huge cavern and cave down below in New York City. Is it there? I have no idea. Does the treasure even still exist? I don't know. I can't tell you anything about that. But what I can tell you is that Freemasonry is not hiding a treasure. We're not keeping money or resources or anything away from anyone, because our main goal is to be able to help people. We want to help. And if we had, the amount of money that they say that treasure was worth, man, we could help so many people with that. And we would, like, guaranteed we would. Let me see here. I do like those movies, though. I do like the movie National Treasure, and I like the National Treasure 2, and I think they're coming out with a third one. They're factually inaccurate when it comes to Freemasonry. They kind of merge a lot of things together, but it's still an adventure. Like, people say it's cheesy or whatever. I still like it. Next question. This one is a good one. And I think people think that, especially some Masons, people think that you can't discuss anything about Freemasonry because we're secret. We can't tell anybody anything. Well, that's not true. There's plenty of things we can talk about, which is why I started this podcast. So, one of the big questions: why do Freemasons wear aprons? Why do we wear aprons? If you were to go through the entered apprentice degree, you would be privy to what's called the apron lecture. Now, technically, I think I could probably quote it to you, because in Ohio, it is not, in our ritual book, it is not ciphered, which means it is in English. It's really not much of a secret. but I don't want to ruin it for somebody that may be going in. But what I can tell you is that we wear an apron because it is, for one, it's the badge of a Mason. And for two, it is an emblem of innocence. So when you get that pure white apron, it is meant to show you that throughout your life, this apron, okay, let me back up. Think about it like this. You receive an apron. That apron is pure white, which means that its white surface is to be a reminder that when you go through life, your actions and your deeds should be as spotless as that white apron. It's a symbol of keeping your actions throughout life pure and innocent. The color white comes from the lambskin material in which it was made from. Entered apprentices, fellow craft, and master masons wear their aprons in different ways. That's because it was a way of symbolizing their rank. A master mason can be and should be, in my opinion, buried wearing their apron when they pass away. I want that, in my opinion, and like I said, this is only my opinion. I want a Masonic funeral. I want to be buried with my apron because it was a huge part of my life. My faith, the Masonic funeral is separate. It doesn't have to be, but it can be separate from your regular funeral service. I want a Masonic funeral because it's a huge part of my life, but I also want to have a regular service because that's my faith, my Christian faith. And that's also how my grandfather did it. He had his Masonic funeral, an Eastern Star funeral the night before, and then the next day we went to his actual funeral service and burial that next day. Oh, excuse me, I had to get me something to drink again. Okay, so what's the symbolism other than it being just a badge of a Mason? There has to be some sort of history behind it, right? Well, there is. Originally, the aprons were worn by operative Masons to protect themselves from rough stones and a place to hold their tools. So as Freemasonry, as free and accepted Masons, evolved into a more speculative fraternity, where men of lawful age could join the Freemasons, the Masonic apron essentially was kept to remember the workmen of our origins. These days, the white leather apron is a badge of fraternal brotherhood and a reminder of the lessons in the 3 degrees of Freemasonry, and it should also serve as a reminder to master Masons that regularly sit in lodge about their obligations. And it should also, even for brothers that don't regularly sit in lodge, that it should be a reminder of your obligations or your commitments or promises, and to uphold the values and brotherly love within the craft of Freemasonry. The lambskin apron to most brothers within the fraternity could mean different things. But a good, but when the fraternity started to establish grand lodges around, and normally it's one per state, unless I'm wrong about that. But when the fraternity started to establish grand lodges, the founding brothers of these grand lodges adopted the working tools and traditions of the operative stonemasons. There is some research that suggests that the original aprons worn by operative masons were made out of leather, and they were large enough to cover to cover the operative Mason from, say, around the bottom of the neck area down to the middle of the thighs. Some even suggest that they went all the way down as far as the ankles. But the speculative brethren of that area were not engaged in stonemasonry, but other industries. And some brothers were, printers, clergy, royalty, merchants, and so on and so forth. So we decided, as free and accepted Masons, to keep the traditional items of operative Masons and the importance of how to identify a brother. Now the brothers keep the apron and include what it symbolizes to them today. So it started out with the operative Masons because they needed a place to keep their tools, and it also helped protect them from the rough stones of the era. And then it kind of, when Masonry transitioned from operative to speculative, they kept the apron, but instead of it being from neck to ankles, they shortened it down, and we have an apron that we tie around our waist, and that is our badge as a Freemason. That's our, nobody can. I mean, you could probably show a picture of a man wearing an apron, a Masonic apron, anywhere in the world, and people will say, "Oh yes, Freemasonry," because that is how we're known. And aprons can get elaborate. Let's say you're just dealing with a brother that wants to come in. He doesn't want to really do anything. He just wants to come in, support the lodge. He puts on just a standard white apron. Then you graduate up to, you move up to the officers. The officers have, and this is all different, per jurisdiction, per lodge. In our lodge, the officers wear a white apron with a blue outline, and they also have the jewel of their office on their apron. And then you move up to Grand Lodge officers, which typically wear purple, because purple is the color of our fraternity. And normally it's reserved for officers in the Grand Lodge. And so that's another way of recognition. If you see a brother come in that's wearing, purple, you know that they are a Grand Lodge officer or a past Grand Lodge officer. And then there's also past master's aprons that you can wear after you have been a master of the lodge and then your year is up. Then when you come in, you wear a past master's apron with the past master's jewel on it. Okay. I feel like I'm rushing this just a little bit, but there's so much here that we can talk about. In Ohio, we have to wear our aprons on the outside of our suit coats or our suit jackets. And for me, where I'm a fat guy, that's a problem just because it makes the tail end of my jacket ride up. And I'm also a senior deacon of the lodge. So that means I have quite a bit of walking that I have to do. So I actually bought what's called mitten clips, and I clipped them to the side of my apron, and then I clip them to the pockets of my jacket, and it makes it so much more comfortable, and I'm still wearing my apron. And so, they're elastic. To me, that was perfect. Like, it works perfectly. I just unclip them, and when I take my apron off and put it there on my chair at the senior deacon's station, and man, it made a world of difference. Trust me. Here is a good question. I have been asked this question before myself, and I'm sure that a lot of other Masons have been asked this question too. It's how long does it take to become a Freemason? And to me, that's subjective because it all depends on the person. So when you go to join a lodge of Freemasonry, you must first contact the lodge, your local lodge, or contact the Grand Lodge of your state, Grand Lodge of Ohio, Grand Lodge of Kentucky, so on and so forth. So, and they'll put you in the right direction. Then you'll meet with one or more brothers of the lodge, talk to them, ask them questions. They'll talk to you, ask you questions. And then, if you're interested and they say, yeah, we'd love to have you. They'll say, we'll need you to fill out a petition. This petition, then you fill it out. It has your name, your address, your date of birth, kind of just standard stuff. Then there's some questions you have to answer. And then you turn that in. And I can't speak for all jurisdictions, but I can, as far as Ohio, you have to then wait. The petition will come in, and then you wait until our next stated meeting. And a stated meeting is just a business meeting, essentially. Your petition will be read in the lodge, and if the brethren decide that they would like to move forward, then an investigating committee is put out, and then you'll be contacted again. And this will be at least 3 brothers, depending on what jurisdiction you're in, and you'll be investigated. Most lodges do background checks. Most lodges try to talk to you at your home, talk to your family, your wife, your girlfriend, fiance, whatever the case, because you have to remember when you join Freemasonry, you're not the only one joining, because theoretically your family's joining as well, because Freemasonry, depending on what you want out of it, is going to take up a lot of time, or not a lot of time, but it's going to take up some time. And so it's good to have your wife there with you when the brothers come and talk to you. After all of that, if the investigating committee says, yes, we'd go ahead and recommend him, they'll say he's either favorable or unfavorable. And then it'll be brought up to a lodge in the next stated meeting for a vote. That vote will either be, yes, we want to accept him, or no, we don't want to accept him. Generally, there's not a whole lot of no votes on there, because the investigating committee, they've done most of the due diligence. But then after the brethren vote and you have to be approved unanimously from the brethren in the lodge. Once you are approved unanimously by the brethren, you will then be set up for your first degree, which is the entered apprentice degree. And as I have said before on this podcast, when you think of degrees, think of them as steps. The entered apprentice degree is taking your first step into Freemasonry. The entered apprentice is, say, youth. Think of it as you're a baby Mason. And then the fellow craft, which is the second degree or second step, you're more of a young adult. You've received a little bit more, and you know a little bit more knowledge. And then when you go to the third degree, which is Master Mason, then you are, I don't want to say old, but you are a mature Mason. You are growing in the fraternity. And just because that you've reached the third degree of Freemasonry and you think, well, I have nothing left to learn, trust me, I learn something new all the time. So it takes some time, and you're looking at least 2 months before you're even into your first degree. And then once you go through your first degree, you'll be given information. You then have to come back to another meeting, another stated meeting, so there's a third month. And then you have to return what's called proficiency work. The proficiency is different in all jurisdictions, but basically what it is it lets the brethren of the lodge know how seriously you're going to take it. So can you join as an entered apprentice and then just never come back? Sure, you can do that, but then you've wasted a lot of your time because there's so much more to learn. Once you give your proficiency back, normally they'll set work for the second degree. So within that same month, usually the Tuesday or Thursday, at least in our lodge, after that stated meeting, you'll be set up for your fellowcraft. Then you come back for the next stated meeting. So you're looking at several months, but don't think of it as a hardship, or don't think of it as a burden to have to wait. It's actually a good thing. I mean, you're anxious and you want to learn and you're wanting to get through this, but it's actually a good thing, because if we were to just throw you in the lodge and just throw everything at you all at once, it will overwhelm you. Trust me, it would overwhelm you. This way, the way we do it, it helps to absorb knowledge and information slower, and so where you can retain it a little bit better. And I think and the actual work, the actual degree work is really interesting, because not only do we put you through work, but then we have what's called a lecture, where we explain to you everything that you just went through and explain to you why you went through what you went through. And you learn so much about the history of speculative Freemasonry. And so yes, it can take some time. And the reason being is we don't want to inundate you with all this information, and then it overwhelms you to the point where you're like, oh man, I can't do this. This is crazy. You mean this and this and this and this? Yes. Okay. So you've got 3 degrees. And by the way, the old saying, if you, I was late for work and my boss gave me the 3rd degree over it. Well, that comes from Freemasonry. So does the term blackballed. I was trying to do this and somebody blackballed me. Well, that comes from Freemasonry when we vote for membership. I think we got time for one more, because I can go through these things and then I go off on rabbit trails, and hopefully it's entertaining for you all listening. The biggest question, probably bigger than what is Freemasonry, the biggest question is, are you a secret society? Is Freemasonry a secret society? And the answer to that is no. Freemasonry is not a secret society. And the reason being is, and I've talked about this before on this podcast, but we meet at a lodge, at least in my lodge. Our lodge is in like almost dead center of town. We've got a huge 3-story building, and we've got a huge Masonic emblem right on the front of it. And it says Masonic Temple right across it. And we have a Facebook page. We have a website. We do not hide the fact that we're Freemasons. That's what secret societies do. Secret societies are people that are belonging to an organization that they don't want anyone to know that they're a part of. I have this hat that I wear all the time. And of course my Masonic ring that is always on my finger, just about. I take it off when I shower, and sometimes I take it off if my fingers are swelling because I've ate too much salt that day, but I wear it out in public. I'm always wearing it. That's about all I wear when I go to work, simply because I have a uniform that I have to wear, but we're not a secret society. And then they say, well, what are you then? Well, we are a society with secrets. We do have secrets that we don't divulge to the general public, but we don't, honestly, the secrets, if you're joining just to get the secrets, you're going to be disappointed, because we don't join Freemasonry to know the secrets. We join Freemasonry as a way of building a bond of brotherhood. The secrets that we do have, the reason that they're secret was because in years and years and years ago, it was the only way to distinguish a brother from another brother was to have ways to identify them. And so the ways to identify another brother are secret. We don't divulge that because it's a way of identifying another brother that you come in contact with. And I remember last year, it was around this time last year. No, it was a little bit later. My brother and I went to, and this was my actual brother, not my Masonic brother, went to Florida to pick up a car that his aunt had given to him. And so we flew out of Cincinnati into Orlando and then rented a car and drove over to Daytona. Well, north of Daytona, Ormond, where we used to live. And his great aunt had given him a car. So on our way back, we get up into South Carolina. No? Yeah, South Carolina. It doesn't matter, but South Carolina. We pull into a gas station, and I see this huge, big black Suburban at the gas pumps, and right on the back of it was a huge emblem, Masonic emblem. Now, you can buy those anywhere. So I saw the brother get out of the Suburban. He walked in, and so after we got gas, I walked in and get me something to drink and use the bathroom, and seen him in there. So I reached out and shook his hand and said, "Hey, brother, I just wanted to say hi and introduce myself." And told him who I was, where I was from, and he saw my ring. I saw his ring. He was an African American, so he happened to be a member of the Prince Hall Freemasons, and but he's still a brother. To me, it's just another, a jurisdiction for the African American brothers. But I bet we talked there for about 10, 15 minutes, and it was a really good time. And at no point in that time did either one of us have to identify each other through our quote unquote secrets, because you can pretty much tell. You can pretty much tell when you're talking to an actual brother and when you're talking to somebody that's just full of crap. So you can buy the emblems I bought this ring on Amazon. Anybody can wear it. I mean, we can't stop anybody. So it's good to have ways to identify a brother from somebody that's just impersonating or trying to do it out of being funny, or maybe they just didn't want to go through the hassle of joining a lodge, so they're going to tell everybody. They read some stuff on the internet, so they think they can get by with it, and they might for a while, but it won't last. Somebody will call them out on it eventually. Okay, this is going to be our last question, and I think I saved the best for last. What's the deal with the goat? We know you Freemasons like to ride goats during your meetings or sacrifice goats or whatever the case may be, and I've talked about this. Oh man, I've talked about this on my on some other episodes, but I'm not exactly sure where the whole rumor about the goat came from. I think it had I don't know, it had something to do with an abbreviation at one time, but The quick answer is, when you ask, what's the deal with the goat? My answer is, what goat? There is no goats involved. I know a lot of people refer to the Baphomet symbol, which has a goat head on it and different things. There is no goat involved in Freemasonry. There is no goat head. There is no Baphomet. There is nothing like that. For one thing, like I was saying, our lodge is in the middle of town. We're like smack dab in the middle of town. So where would we keep the goat? We have an intersection and two main roads on one side of us, a huge big parking lot, and a doctor's office behind us. It's all pavement around. Where are we going to keep it? Where are we going to keep the goat? And I want to know who the guy is that's going to have to feed it. So no, there is no goats involved. There is no animals involved in Freemasonry. It's just one of those things. Just like the people that'll say, well, I know you all worship the devil. We don't worship anybody, and we don't worship anything. We do pray, but we pray to the God of our choosing, as in, I pray to God and Jesus. But if there was a Jewish brother there, he's going to probably pray to Yahweh. If there was, I don't know, like, I know Catholics and Freemasons don't really get along, but we do have Catholic brothers. And so when they pray, they're more than likely going to give, I think it's called the sign of the cross. And so, it's up to each and every individual Mason to have his own faith. So let's see. Is there any questions on Facebook that you all would like to have answered before we sign off? Right now, I'm working on trying to figure out how to do a Skype call for my guest. He is a district education officer, and he's super knowledgeable on basically everything Freemasonry, but he's also knowledgeable on appendant bodies. And what I need to do is figure out how to record my Skype call through my interface to be able to record it onto Facebook and onto my recording platform for all of you listening that are not on Facebook right now. So I'm currently working on that. It's been a struggle for me. I'm gonna have to dive more into YouTube University, I guess, but I think I may have a plan, but I don't have the time to do that right now. So, but that is coming. Eventually that will come to where I'm going to have a guest on. My brother that I was talking about that went to Florida with me, he is also a Masonic brother. And so he's going to come on with me whenever he can. And so I'm trying to get some guests so you guys aren't just listening to my voice all the time, because nobody wants that, trust me. I'm also going to try to start throwing some comedy in. For anybody that knows me, I love to make people laugh. My childhood wasn't the greatest growing up, and I was this sad little pitiful kid. And so I as a defense mechanism have a sense of humor now that sometimes makes people erupt in laughter and sometimes fall silent and all you hear is crickets. But I do love comedy. I love making people laugh. And the reason being is I don't want people to be sad around me. I don't like that because it's like I know there's a time and place for humor. I mean, I've got that, but I just don't like it. So I always try to make people laugh and smile and have a good time. So I want to try to do, I don't know, maybe skits or sketches or something like that. Um, and the problem with that is if you're listening on a podcast platform, you are not going to be able to see it unless you get onto Facebook. Um, now I can do audio skits or audio sketches or whatever they are, and that might be fun and funny. But anyway, I'm going down another rabbit trail. That's just some future plans that I have. So we've been on about 50 minutes. I think that's long enough. There's probably thousands of questions out there um, that could be answered. But I'm going to send out a special request to everybody out there. Everybody on Facebook and everybody listening on your podcast platform, if you like what you hear, if you like where the direction that it's going, we haven't been on very long. We haven't been doing this very long. We're up to almost this will be the 17th episode. And, so, we're still fairly new. So we're going to evolve. We're going to be doing different things. And I say we, even though I'm a one-man show right now, but I want to eventually get brothers from the lodge involved. I want to get my brother involved. I want to get maybe I'd like to get my wife on one day so that we can talk about what it on from a from the perspective of a Freemason's wife. And I know that's subjective, but I think that it would be interesting. I would also like to get somebody on, and I'm going to try. My dad wants to come and watch the podcast, but he doesn't want to be on it. He just wants to see the behind the scenes stuff. He is not a Mason. And what I would like to do is convince him, and I bet if I asked him really nicely, I could get him to come on so that we can talk to each other about what do you know about Freemasonry, or what are your questions, or what are things that you've heard, not knowing what goes on in a lodge room because he's not a Mason and I am. And I think that that would be fun and also informative because this podcast is for everybody. It's for brothers, it's for non-brothers, it's for families and wives, and it's a way to try to educate people on Freemasonry. So, but yeah, if you like what you're hearing, if you like the direction it's going, and I know not every episode is going to be the greatest and some will be fantastic, but get on Facebook if you're a Facebook user and share it around if you don't mind. That way we can reach more people, and I think that it would be, all the Facebook page is over 900 likes now already, which is like incredible to me. Like I can't even fathom that. So that's pretty cool. And I would like to just reach more people. And I, like I've said before, I'm not competing with any other podcast out there that is about Freemasonry. As a matter of fact, I listen to several Freemasons podcasts. Um, and that's one of them, the Freemasons podcast. I listen to that one. That one is one of my favorites. The Winding Stairs, Whence Came You. There's others that I listen to, and because we're not in competition, you're like, well, you're giving free advertisement to your competitor. We're not competitors. Each podcast has a different way they do things, and each podcast can teach you something that the other one may not have talked about. So we're not competitors, we're brothers, and we're just using the podcast platform as a way to enlighten people about Freemasonry. So, that is all I've got for this time around. I want to thank everyone for watching and listening, and we will be back next week. Like I said, I'm going to try to come up with an actual schedule, but I can't do it right now because I don't want to say, yes, I'll be on at this time, and then not be able to do it. So right now I'm trying to do one a week, and then we'll get more of a schedule nailed down. Um, so I want to thank everyone for watching. Remember to visit our Facebook page and give it a like and a share if you don't mind, the Masonic Ring Podcast. Visit our website, theMasonicRingPodcast.com, and communicate with us. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. Tell us something that you would like to hear us discuss on a future podcast. So until next time, I'm Brother Nathan Davis, and always remember to keep it on the level.